If you spend enough time around modern tactical bays or carrying polymer striker-fired pistols, it is incredibly easy to look at the .38 Special and completely dismiss it. People call it a relic, they call it underpowered, they claim it belongs in a museum right next to the black powder muskets. But as an instructor and a guy who has spent his entire life entrenched in American gun culture, let me give you a reality check. You might think you know this rimmed cartridge, but there is a massive iceberg of ballistic history hiding just beneath the surface. We are talking about a round that literally built modern law enforcement. It is a round that stepped up during global conflicts. It is the direct biological father of the .357 Magnum. Think about this for a second. How did a cartridge born in the era of horse drawn carriages not only survive but actively outlive supposedly superior modern calibers like the .40 Smith & Wesson? Today, we are taking a hard professional look at the .38 Special. We are going to break down the tactical evolution of its bullet designs, its forgotten military service, the legendary FBI load, and the dangerous mechanical pitfalls you need to avoid if you are buying military surplus. By the time we are done here on the range today, you are going to look at your grandfather's old wheel gun with a hell of a lot more respect. Let's get into it. Forged in frustration, the birth of a standard to understand why this round exists, you have to look at the absolute mess that was late 19th century ammunition. Back in 1899, Smith & Wesson introduced this cartridge because the U.S. military was dealing with a severe ballistic failure. The .38 Long Colt was the standard issue at the time, and it was failing miserably in the field during the Philippine American War. Troops found out the hard way that the Long Colt simply did not have the terminal ballistics to reliably stop determined Moro warriors. On top of that, the commercial market was a complete disaster. Colt had their proprietary rounds. Smith & Wesson had theirs. Nothing was truly standardized, and it was a logistical nightmare for local sheriffs and civilian shooters alike. Enter the .38 Smith & Wesson Special. It brought much-needed standardization to the industry and quickly dominated the American revolver market. Now, here is a fascinating technical quirk you can use to impress your buddies at the gun counter. The name is actually a lie. The actual bullet diameter of the .38 Special is 357 inches. Why the discrepancy? Early revolvers used heeled bullets where the bullet was the exact same width as the outside of the brass casing. When engineers moved the lubrication grooves inside the case, the bullet diameter had to shrink. But the industry kept the .38 namesake for marketing continuity. Originally loaded with black powder, it quickly transitioned to smokeless powder, offering shooters a cleaner burn and vastly improved velocity. Smith & Wesson launched this round alongside their military and police revolver built on the legendary K-frame. It was the perfect marriage of steel and brass. The original factory load pushed a 158-grain lead round, nose projectile at about 800 to 870 feet per second out of a 4-inch barrel. It hit the sweet spot. It packed way more kinetic energy than the anemic pocket guns of the era. But it was far more controllable than the heavy-hitting 44s and 45s. It effectively killed off weaker competitors like the shorter .38 Smith & Wesson, which struggled to break 700 feet per second. Drafted into combat, the hidden military record when we talk about American military sidearms, everyone immediately screams 1911. But the truth is, the .38 Special has quietly served our armed forces for decades. When World War I kicked off, the U.S. war machine simply could not produce enough .45 ACP 1911 pistols to meet demand. To fill the gap, the government issued Smith & Wesson military and police revolvers chambered in .38 Special as substitute standard weapons, and its service did not end in the trenches of Europe. Fast forward all the way to the 1980s. If you looked in the holsters of U.S. military aircrews or military police, you would frequently find .38 Special wheel guns. Why? Because it made logistical sense. Firing projectiles weighing between 130 and 158 grains. The recoil was highly manageable. It was lightweight, ridiculously reliable, and didn't require the complex manual of arms that a semi-auto demands. Even as the .45 ACP and the 9mm dominated the battlefield, the .38 Special remained a staple training caliber and a reliable backup weapon. When these guns eventually hit the civilian surplus market, they introduced generations of Americans to the platform. The ultimate cop gun and the legendary FBI load if you were a cop anywhere in America between the 1920s and the 1990s. You almost certainly carried a .38 Special for police administrators. It was a no-brainer. The mild recoil impulse meant that fresh academy recruits, regardless of their size or prior shooting experience, could qualify easily. In a gunfight, a well-placed shot with a manageable caliber will always beat a flinched miss from a hand cannon. But the early days weren't perfect. Street cops quickly realized that the traditional 158-grain lead round, nose bullets had terrible terminal performance. They punched clean through threats without transferring energy. Ammunition engineers went back to the drawing board, and they birthed an absolute legend in tactical circles, the FBI load. The blueprint. This was a 158-grain lead semi-wad cutter hollow point. The pressure pushed to +P pressure levels. The terminal effect. The flat front and sharp shoulders of the semi-wad cutter profile acted like a hole punched through tissue, while the hollow cavity forced the soft lead to expand violently. Even when fired from a 2-inch snub-nosed revolver where velocity is too low for standard hollow points to open up, the sharp shoulders of that wad cutter profile still tore a devastating wound channel. It was a masterclass in bullet engineering. The gangster era and the birth of the Magnum. Let's rewind slightly to the 1930s. Motorized bandits like John Dillinger were using heavy steel automobiles to escape bank robberies. Law enforcement realized standard .38 special rounds were bouncing off car doors and primitive ballistic vests. Smith & Wesson answered the call with the .38-44 heavy duty. They took their massive N-frame, normally reserved for .44 caliber rounds, and chambered it for an insanely hot .38 special load. We are talking about pushing a 158-grain bullet at over 1,100 feet per second. This gun completely changed the ballistic landscape. It caught the attention of a man named Elmer Keith, a legendary pioneer in American gun culture. Keith started hand-loading these cases to their absolute physical limits. His wildcat experiments directly led to the creation of the .357 Magnum in 1935. By simply lengthening the .38 special case to hold more powder, they created a monster. The longer case was a safety feature, engineered so you couldn't accidentally drop a high-pressure Magnum round into an older .38 revolver and blow the cylinder apart. But the reverse is a tactical advantage we still use today. If you own a .357 Magnum, you can safely run .38 special through it all day long. It is the ultimate training hack. You save money, save your wrists from Magnum fatigue, and still get top-tier trigger time. The evolution of the projectile a cartridge is only as good as the bullet it throws. The .38 special didn't survive just on nostalgia. It survived because the projectile technology evolved. Wad cutters. These look like little flying soup cans seated flush with the brass. They have zero recoil and cut beautifully clean, round holes in paper targets. If you are training a brand new shooter who is terrified of recoil, hand them a target wad cutter. Semi-wad cutters. Elmer Keith perfected this. A flat nose with a sharp shoulder that sits outside the casing. It leaves room for more powder inside the brass, and delivers incredible barrier penetration and tissue damage without relying on expansion. Modern hollow points. We have come a long way since the FBI load. Today, companies are putting massive research into defensive wheelgun ammo. Lines like Horn, a D-critical defense, and Federal Punch use advanced jacketed technology and polymer inserts to guarantee reliable expansion, even out of short barrels. Overpressure rounds, when you step up to +P or +P plus ammunition, you are pushing 110 to 125 grain projectiles. Well over 1,000 feet per second. You get Magnum, adjacent terminal performance, without the blinding muzzle flash and concussive blast. Fluted projectiles, introduced around 2015. These solid copper defensive rounds use fluid dynamics to cause massive tissue disruption without needing to expand at all, completely changing the snub-nose defensive game. Beyond the snubby, a versatile chambering. We all picture a 2-inch detective gun when we hear .38 special, but this round runs in some incredibly diverse weapon systems. Full-size duty guns, classic medium, frame revolvers like the Smith & Wesson Model 10 and Model 15 are absolute tack drivers. Even the legendary Colt Python designed for the Magnum shoots .38 special like an absolute dream. Lever, action rifles, cowboys and homesteaders love a pistol caliber carbine. But here is a pro tip from the range. Not all Magnum lever guns feed .38 special reliably. If the overall cartridge length is under 1.40 inches, the lifter mechanism can jam. If you want a rifle that runs both flawlessly, look at dedicated dual-caliber systems like the Marlin 1890-4 or the Rossi R92, the weird semi-autos. Yes, they exist. Smith & Wesson built the Model 52 specifically for bullseye competition. It used a specialized 5-round magazine to feed flush, seated 38 wadcutters. There is even a Kunin 1911 that, with a 10-pound recoil spring swap, will cycle rimmed 38 special cases. They are niche, finicky, and incredibly cool pieces of engineering history. The harsh reality, limitations, and dangers. I am not going to stand here and tell you this round is flawless. We have to look at the tactical realities of the modern world. When fired from a short barrel, the muzzle energy pales in comparison to modern 9mm 40 Smith & Wesson or 45 ACP defensive loads during its military tenure. The Hague Convention banned expanding ammunition. When you restrict the 38 Special to full metal jacket, it becomes a remarkably poor fight stopper. Then there is the hardware issue. Wheel guns give you 5 or 6 rounds. In an era where a micro-compact 9mm holds 12 rounds flush, capacity is a major liability. Reloading under extreme stress, even if you train heavily with speed loaders or speed strips, is mechanically slower than slamming a fresh magazine into a semi-auto. But the biggest danger comes from the guns themselves. You have to be incredibly careful buying vintage or surplus revolvers. Decades ago, foreign companies flooded the market with cheap knockoff revolvers made from terrible steel, falsely stamping them as 38 Special. Even more dangerous are the modified Smith & Wesson Victory models. During the war, many were chambered for the wider, shorter 38 Smith & Wesson cartridge. When they were imported back to the U.S., shady gunsmiths literally reamed the cylinders out to accept the longer 38 Special. Because the original chamber was wider, firing a modern round in these guns causes the brass case to bulge or completely rupture. It is a catastrophic safety hazard. In fact, the revolver Lee Harvey Oswald used to murder Officer J.D. Tippit was one of these dangerously reamed out surplus guns. Always check your barrel markings, and have a competent gunsmith inspect vintage wheel guns before you pull that trigger. The 38 Special isn't going anywhere. It has survived the transition from black powder to smokeless. It survived the semi-auto revolution, and thanks to massive leaps in projectile engineering, it remains a highly viable option for concealed carry, home defense, and training. It is a piece of American tactical history that you can still carry in your waistband today. What is your experience with this classic wheel gun cartridge? Do you still carry a snubby, or have you fully transitioned to modern micro 9s? Drop your loadout and your thoughts in the comments below. I always love reading what you guys are running on the range. If you found this breakdown useful and want to support real no-nonsense firearms education, do me a massive favor. Hit that like button, share this video with a buddy who still thinks revolvers belong in a museum, and help us beat the algorithm. Make sure you subscribe and ring that bell icon so you don't miss our next deep dive. Stay safe, watch your six, and I'll see you out on the range.